Hello, how are you doing? My name is John Witherbee from Witherbee's Chairs, and I build Windsor chairs. This is a Windsor rocker. What I'd like to do is demonstrate how to carve the knuckles for Windsor chairs. It has a nose and a volute on either side. Makes them very comfortable to put your hands on. It's just a nice detail instead of just having a flat hand. This is a steam bent arm that would be used on that style of chair. You glue a piece of wood to get the width that you need, and you clean it off and then glue a block on the bottom. Make sure that your grain is all going the same direction so you don't have problems with cross grain movement. This is an oak arm, so you use oak or ash or something with similar grain so when it's painted the parts don't show up differently. Carved one side already, and you can see that you would clean the top off, cut out the shape, and this will vary according to how you want to do it. I used to make these with a shorter nose on them, but I've seen them with a little longer, and I've liked the look of, so I make them longer. This actually sticks out 5/8 of an inch past these tips. I drill holes first, then cut them out, and then this for a marker. For small, I have bigger hands, but this would be for the small hands. Mark it out, make a straight cut with a handsaw, and then use a chisel to round off the ends. Once you get to that point, then you can carve up the hands. They're really pretty simple. Some of it is really dictated by your tools, the sweep of your tools. You can start, you need a little rim, so just kind of freehand. You don't want to carve this out so you have a sharp edge. That'd be fragile, easy to break. You would chip it. This will give it a little meat to it that will allow it to, stand the rigors of time. And if you notice that this rim, you leave, 3/16 of an inch or so, whatever suits your taste, but a little bit of rim, so what you'll end up is some real meat there when it's finally done. See how because these are end grain, and when the chairs get bashed around, it would be easy to break them. So if you give it a little bit of meat, they're very durable. So what we'll do is carve the volute. Use a small sweep. And that's going to vary by what tools you have, and you can experiment with different sweeps. Always a good reason to buy another tool. That's never a hardship. You follow the circle right around. Instead of drawing it, just let the tool do it. And then what you want is a little wider sweep to finish it off. And then what we're going to do is take all this material out of there. Pretty simple. All carving is cut a baseline, carve to it. So what we'll do is chip to it. The very first one, just a little bit of pressure just to make a groove. Always use something to tap your tool. Don't fall in the trap of hitting with your hand like that. It will damage your hand. Maybe not tomorrow, but after some time of doing it, it's kind of tough on it. So always just use a mallet to save yourself. I'm trying to carve this in a way that you can see it. Usually I have my hands covering it more than this, trying to stay out of the way so you can see how it works. So you just cut down to your baseline. We're only going to do this just one time with this small tool. After we opened up the baseline the first time, and now we'll just chop it straight down. Be careful, this is long grain wood. The reason you use long grain wood is because you have to steam bend it. And they steam bend the best. And it's painfully easy to pop this little round guy right out of there if you are too aggressive with it. So we'll go back to that line that we drew in. Just use a bigger, wider sweep to clean it up. Slightly deepen it. And just refine. I always leave the facets from the tool in. You try to get a wide tool to clean it up, but you leave the facets to make it look like it, it actually is carved by a person. That's something that's, run out on a CNC machine. We'll just blend out a little bit like that with a flatter sweep. Just a couple of cuts. If you feel ambitious, you could do it all in one chop. But for the extra 30 seconds, and clean up that corner. And sometimes if it doesn't look round enough, you can take the chisel carving chisel right off the end if you want, and just clean that end up a little bit. These will be painted, and it'll really look in relief. It'll come right out. We'll just do the other side. This will be the inside, a little bit different on the inside because it's a flat end. And if you're experimenting with this, you don't have to start with a steam bent arm. Obviously, you can use a straight piece of wood and glue these panels up in order to carve it instead of risking your steam bent pieces. We'll make a little rim, and then this guy actually will flare out like that. These things aren't critical. You want them to look similar. They're never going to be exactly the same because you're doing it by hand and by eye. So there's always going to be a little bit of difference. You just don't want them to look, like somebody else carved one side and the other. Work your way around. See how that? And then use your wider sweep. So, see, ideally that one came right into the corner just like that. That's the best. You may not always do that. Sometimes you have to do a little adjusting, chipping that a little bit. Have to be careful with that so I'm not breaking that loose. Very easy to do with oak. Just chop down your baseline. These kind of look like a little paisley print, the way the shape is. You don't have to have this exact volute. There are all kinds of shapes of volutes. Some of them, people carve them without making a smooth circle like that. They use a very narrow chisel like this, and it's all these lines, and try to make them even all the way around, so it's like the spokes of a wheel. That's an interesting look. Basically what you're doing is using the narrow chisel, which takes less effort to use, to get rid of as much waste wood as you possibly can. And we'll chop this right down. Then that line that we made, you just put your chisel right in there. You have a little chip there that came off. We'll still continue to carve it, and what we can do is take a little drop of super glue and glue that little chip right back in. Doesn't happen every time, but it happens often enough to make you want to tear your hair out. As long as you got the piece to put back in, you're all set. And sometimes I use, these are painted. Sometimes I use a little super glue to size these, the carving. Just put a drop in there and wipe it in, and it'll fill up the pores of the wood and make painting it quicker and easier. Now, we have it roughed out. All right, we want it to look like that. As easy as falling off a rock. What we're going to do is just drop that line down the center, draw a couple of these just for reference. You have a circle here. We're just going to mimic that on the inside. And that's the reason why I drill holes in these before I cut them out. It just gives you a head start on that groove. Give something for your rasp to ride in. Obviously, this is the underside. You do want it to round. It's not like you're going to look at that underside, but you will feel it when you have your hand wrapped around it. So make sure that is nice and round. Do the same thing on the other side. You could carve these with carving tools, but generally, most everyone cleans them up with a rasp anyway. It goes pretty quickly with a rasp. I don't see why you wouldn't just start with a rasp. Lines that we drew, we're just going to lengthen them out a little bit. Again, this is by eye. If you want it really bold, make them really deep. If that's not your taste, obviously you can always go deeper. Hard to put it back on. This is a short pattern maker's rasp. It's got a very coarse side, and it's got a less coarse side. We use the coarse one to just eat the material right off. Just trying to make a nice smooth round ball at the end and blend in the sharp corners. Then you can flip it over and use the smoother side and clean it up. Then you take a flat chisel. If you look right on the end, you still got your lines that you drew in. So we'll just take a flat chisel, work our way right around that line. Do the same thing on this side. And just take your rasp, smooth out the facets. Since we curved them in with the round rasp from the other side, we don't need to touch them anymore. It's all done. We'll just round this guy. Your hand will reach right around this naturally when you're sitting. And you want it nice and rounded. You can't see it really very well when the chair is sitting there, but your fingers will find that. And again, you can clean it up with the smooth, the less rough side, but your fingers will find that. And again, you can clean it up with the smooth, the less rough side.